right, let's get it started in here. Nerd.
Blah, 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 blah. All of that chit-chat's gonna get you hurt.
I'll bring you in warm, or I can bring you in cold.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
Oh, toss a coin to your witcher, a friend of humanity.
Thank you.
Yeah, Just Mercy for me takes the cake on so many different levels, probably because it's the quote, I don't know how you measure this, but the biggest role I've had to date. But also the relevancy of the story, the fact that it was a true story, the fact that I found out that my character was based on a real guy from the book, not in the context of the script itself, but he was a real guy that Bryan Stevenson interacted with in a prison, and then the myself excluded, but the caliber of talent that I got to work with for so many days was pretty amazing. Yeah,
it was. So I remember my wife and I, everything's going on in the world right now. And obviously race has been a really hot topic lately. So we wanted to become more in tune with what was going on, because we're out West. Like, it's not, it's not nearly as big of, I don't want to say it's as big of an issue. It's not that, but it hasn't been like something we necessarily grew up with. Like, I have a friend who's Black, and I've talked to him about it and what it was like, but it's different than it is in the South. So
you're right. Yes. Yeah. And so, yeah, very much so, because I remember when I, went from Atlanta to LA, it really felt like, in a way, not in a necessarily bad or good way, it just felt like a different world in that regard. Because you're right. There wasn't that, I guess, tension that there's, because when I was a child back in, say early 90s, because I'm the youngest of 5 kids. So when all of my siblings were in high school, it got so tense, they shut the high school down for, I think, 3 days.
Wow.
Because the racial tension was so, and I vividly remember that, like my parents saying, stay away from that school right now. Like it just got so bad. So you're right. It's when people ask me about the South, and I guess it's nationwide, obviously it's a systemic issue, but I just kind of say racism is alive and well here in the South. Especially, we live just on the outskirts of Atlanta. So it's metropolitan. It's a mixed bowl here in Atlanta, but I mean, you get even as little as like 10, 15 minutes outside of the city, and you're in the South, and you're in the country. So yeah, so that's what I thought was so cool, and I'm so fortunate and so lucky that they decided to take a story like Just Mercy and come and shoot it like right here in the South, obviously, because that's where the Equal Justice Initiative is based out of, is Montgomery. So I love that they came and just shot it right here on location, and it's sad how relevant that story is, considering it took place in the 80s, at least that portion of Bryan Stevenson's life, to know that it's so relevant now. But I guess in a way it's a blessing that maybe it can bring some awareness to people, and nothing else, bring awareness to Bryan Stevenson and the work that guy does, because he is literally, kind of tagged as like a real life superhero, and he really is. I mean, the man's work is extraordinary that he's done for decades now.
Yeah, we watched the movie, my wife and I, because we were wanting to become more in tune with, how we could be better, how we could help some of the problems. And I remember watching the movie, and I was like, we need to interview someone from this. So, I tried Michael B. Jordan, tried Jamie Foxx.
Weird.
Really put ourselves out there. We didn't even try. No, but I watched the performance, and I texted Johnny that night, and I was like, Johnny, there's this guy named Hayes Mercure. He was in this movie. Like, his character was really cool. I really want to have him on the cast. What can we do to get him? And so Johnny and I started talking, and then we just ended up messaging you because we figured that would be the easiest way.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you guys did. Yeah. And that set was so interesting because I guess because it's a true story. It's about these are real people that were involved in this. And what the coolest part, at least for me, I feel like all of the talk that's going on now with racism and social justice and the systemic issues that we're having, that we kind of have this little micro version of that on set, back in September, October 2018, because during obviously the courtroom movie, there's a lot of courtroom scenes, and all of us are there, kind of the ensembles there. But in between setups and takes or whatnot, we would all be hanging out in this one room, all the cast. And it kind of became this really vulnerable, open dialogue area where Jamie Foxx is talking about, the issues that he had growing up in Texas as a young Black man. And then there were Black actors here from Atlanta and from New Orleans. And so it kind of became this really like almost like a town hall type discussion. And it was just really cool. It feels like what's happening now nationwide kind of like started in that room for us, given the context of the story. So it was I guess really cool, and to be honest, in a good way, a little bit uncomfortable to be sitting in those rooms and hearing all these stories, and me just simply being able to admit to myself and go, yeah, never had that happen. Yeah, that's never been an issue for me. Like, wow, okay, feeling the privilege pretty hard right now. Let me go like grab a coffee.
Right.
But yeah, so it was it was a really cool experience, and to see like Jamie Foxx talking to a younger Black man about his experience and sort of almost like guiding him in how to maybe handle whatever's going on in that young man's life. It was a really cool thing.
Right. And that's cool just to, I mean, here you're sitting around, I would call them, they've portrayed superheroes, although I guess Michael B. Jordan's and Jamie Foxx's are a little more on the villain side, but superpowered individuals. Yeah. I mean,
right.
Really cool actors, Baby Driver. Like, yeah. For me, it would be like meeting actual heroes. Like, these are people, who I've grown up on and think are just incredible. Right. Was that cool to meet
100%.
These actors?
It was. It was, and they were all as gracious as they could be too with their time. And there was Jamie Foxx is Jamie Foxx. That's what was so
really?
He is on. Yeah, oh yeah, and he's holding court and he's telling jokes. And that man is like he is a wordsmith, and he is such a good storyteller. Even if it's the most simple thing, he can make it so entertaining. And even in between takes, if it was a short setup, in the courtroom when we were all just hanging out in there, I mean, he turned around to all the background who were in the scene, and we're just kind of engaging with them and telling these stories and making everyone laugh. So yeah, it was really cool. Is this correct? Y'all are gonna hate me. I'm not a huge comic book or superhero follower, but all three of them have played in like a superhero type movie, correct? Bree, Jamie, and Michael. That is correct, isn't it?
Correct. Yeah. So Jamie Foxx was in the Amazing Spider-Man 2. He was the electric guy. I can't remember the official name they gave him. Johnny might be able to help me.
That was it. Yeah.
Captain Marvel is Brie Larson, and then Michael B. Jordan is,
of course, Killmonger. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So and Michael,
go ahead.
So just to give you like an example of how good and kind they were with their time is, on my last day when I wrapped, my oldest sister adopted a son from Ethiopia, and Wogeni is his name, and he was at the time probably still a huge Black Panther fan, because it still had a lot of buzz around it. And so on my last day set, I wrote out a sign that said, "What's up, Wogeni?" And Michael B. at the end of it, he held up the sign and we took a picture.
Oh, cool.
So we framed that and sent that to Wogeni and to one of my other nephews, Brock, who's a huge Black Panther fan as well. But just to give you an idea of how they were really great. Everyone on that set, it was a fantastic set to work on. And Destin, the director, I mean, he was great working with my character and finding, because there's not a ton of dialogue with my character, but there was a lot of, I guess, maybe more nuanced moments that we talked about in sort of this guy Jeremy's story in his journey, and it was fun to get to play out.
Well, my take on your character was that a lot of the characters in the movie didn't have arcs. Some of them definitely did, but Michael B. Jordan right from the start is a good person. He starts a good person in the story and he ends a good person. He doesn't, I mean, he doesn't have this huge learning curve to go through. Same with Brie Larson. Right. Starts a good person, ends a good person.
Yeah.
But your character doesn't necessarily start a good person. You know what I mean?
Right. No.
Is that hard playing a villain? I'm just curious. I was like, was that weird for you at all to play someone who's not such a good person?
It would. I was telling someone about this when it released back in January, because they asked kind of that same question. And I said, well, you know what, man? I said, I kind of grew up with a lot of Jeremys. I mean, really, it's whether that's sad to say or just what it is. I had a lot to go off of in terms of who is this guy and where does he come from. And I actually took a page out of Michael B's script, so to speak, on how to prep for Jeremy, because since he did have a bit of a journey, and you're right, he starts at a pretty unsavory place. I thought, well, I've got to get there, and I have to believe that this is how I believe, and these are the viewpoints that I have towards Black people, and I've got to get there. And I watched an Off Camera with Sam Jones. I don't know if y'all are familiar with that podcast. It's a fantastic podcast, and Michael B. Jordan was on it back towards the beginning of it. And he was given a tip by another actor, I forget who it was, about journaling as your character, not necessarily writing a backstory of I was born here, but literally taking a moment, a slice of life out of that character's life and just journaling about it and talking about feelings and what it was. So I kind of took that approach because I'd heard that interview long ago. And so when I got this role, I thought, I'm going to try this journaling thing. I've never done it. And that really let me take a step into Jeremy's shoes, was to just begin journaling maybe why, at the start of the story for me, why I felt this way towards Black people and why I even had this job. So yeah, it was a challenge, but being able to do that and to find compassion even for someone like this and why they feel this way, because obviously I'm sure you've heard before, like, the worst thing an actor can do is judge their character, right. Because as soon as we do that, we can't really, there's a separation, there's a gap once we start placing judgment on that person. And I remember in one of my earlier acting classes, someone saying, well, how do you play a serial killer? How does someone do that? And it's just like anything else. You have to, everyone believes that what they're doing. Not many people believe that I'm an asshole, what I'm doing is wrong here. I mean, maybe we have moments of that, but for the most part, we feel that what we are doing is the right thing to do and it's justified. And maybe even it's, divine that we're being led to do something. So I think that's I guess the trick or the key in a role like this. If it necessarily doesn't resonate with you from the beginning, you go, oh yeah, I know this guy is. I think and feel and eat just like him. You got to find a way in there and somehow say, okay, well, this is how I feel, and this is what I say in this role. What would it take for me, Hayes, to get to that point and kind of work from that place? So it's a fun process, and it's nerve-wracking too, because it never ever feels complete or right. And you just kind of do it on the day, and whatever comes out, you just, it's stuck there forever. So you just hope that it's worthwhile.
Right. Well, I have to tell you, you did a really good job, because so spoiler warning for just this next 10 seconds, but there's a scene where you have Michael B. Jordan strip search because you won't let him into the prison until he does. Right. And I remember you got a rise out of me. I was ticked. I was I wanting to jump into the screen and punch that security guard. It was so messed up. Yeah. So it was a really good job showing something that, if it was a white guy who'd shown up, he wouldn't have had to go through that, Right. And so for me, that was whoa, it was a crazy scene. It was, I don't know, what was it like kind of filming that? Sorry if that's too personal or whatever.
No, not at all. It was, luckily, and there was a scene that didn't make the final cut for us, but it was kind of more of a follow-up with our interaction towards the end of the movie. But luckily, we shot that part first, and then we moved into the strip search room. So and it was my last day on set. So Michael B. and I had been around each other for a while there. But yeah, I mean, there was, we both, I think, kind of quote, went there, and we got to this place in that room where it was tense. And luckily, it was a quote closed set in that regard. So, there was minimal people in the room with this. And so we kind of just stayed in that headspace, I think, for the duration of shooting that scene. And I guess as best I could, just let myself go there and kind of just blamed him for, the fact that, if you want to get in here, this is what you got to do to get into this place, and kind of let myself go there. And I was sure to give him a huge hug after we were out and kind of hug out all the racism. If there's such a thing, I don't know.
I mean, you did a great job in terms of, it was super eye-opening for someone like me where it was really cool. It was really an interesting scene. And you give him a look as you're leaving the room, and I'm just oh, that man, I hate that man. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I mean, that's funny. We worked on that little end moment there for a bit, because we were trying to figure out what would be what is this final moment, and of But it's again, myself excluded, but it's such a good scene in the regard that it allows for Michael B to have that moment of rebuilding himself and
Right.
knowing that this is what I'm into here in the South. This is not Harvard. Like, this is real. And that's what, because that is a slice of life, and unfortunately here in the South.
Yeah, it was so, like, again, what I said, someone who's from out West, that was really eye-opening, and it was really cool. And I really enjoyed the film. I've been talking a lot. In case you can't tell, like, I got really into the film, and yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, cool, man. No, that's great. Yeah.
I was so excited for the interview.
At least it's like, yeah. And again, I think that's so cool that we're even having this conversation, because then there's a little bit of awareness here with us, and then whomever listens to this will have, hopefully maybe it sparks a little more awareness. And not that it's going to be the end all be all to fix things here, but I think obviously if you look at I'm gonna get nerdy here for a minute, like the education continuum as I see it, obviously starts with awareness and education and knowledge. And so, but without that knowledge, we have to have that awareness to spark the maybe the curiosity to go find knowledge. So yeah, if nothing else, I think, and I love what Warner Brothers did with making it free on all platforms for the month of June.
So sick.
It was such a classy move on their part, because so many people, I think, got to check that out that otherwise, everyone's tight on the dollar right now. So to be able to go watch that for free, given everything that's going on right now, was pretty timely. Yeah.